Hey guys, I'm Karina.
And I'm Eric.
And welcome back to the Late Podcast. The law according to Eric. Hey guys, it's Eric and Karina. I just wanted to give a little message at the beginning. As we all know, a couple of episodes ago, Eric decided to shout out his friend Todd again on one of the episodes that he decided to do. But sadly, that episode, the sound got messed up. Long story short, there was unnecessary sound, unnecessary echoes that shouldn't have went into that episode. As an apology and as in a makeup, we are going to re-release the same episode that we recorded with Todd when this originally came out as a Flashback Friday episode for all of you. So enjoy again. So today, our topic is defamation. So Eric had told you guys last episode that he wanted to speak on this because we had gotten a couple of stories like that for a previous episode.
So when we did our episode about the rappers beefing and the diss tracks and lyrics, a lot of people posted questions on Reddit about whether or not they could get in trouble for recording like songs about someone they know or writing poems or whatever,
Right.
Just anything like that. So really these questions were, am I committing defamation or can I be liable for defamation? And that got me thinking, that we could do sort of an episode about defamation, but mostly because your boy here has some firsthand experience in defending defamation claims. And I am very, very excited to announce that we have a special guest that's going to come on in a few minutes. His name is Todd Witteles. He goes by the moniker of Dan Druff. Todd is a professional poker player. He is a World Series of Poker bracelet winner. He has a podcast and a website and a radio show called Poker Fraud Alert Radio. You can go to pokerfraudalert.com. He'll tell you all about it, but Todd has been outing scammers and things like that in the poker community and kind of in the gaming world for years. Been on 60 Minutes, was victimized himself. I mean, there's nobody better equipped to talk about gaming and the things that go on in gaming.
Right.
And especially on this topic. So let me start us off by saying that defamation is a legal right provided by California statute. It's under California's Code of Civil Procedure, sections 44, 45A, and 46. Without getting into super technical legal detail, generally speaking, defamation is a false statement, meaning the fact of the statement itself is made by a person who knows it's false, that is harmful to the person's reputation, is published. Now, the word published doesn't mean like a book.
Right.
It can be a website, it can be over the air in an interview. It just has to be disseminated, right, to the public. And it has to be heard by someone other than the person that you're talking about. So if I go on the firm's website and I post that Karina is a biological male with two feet and a penis, right, and 4 fingers, and somebody other than you sees that, that meets that last prong. And so, and the last thing is, just as a matter of clarification, because people get confused, if it's an oral statement, okay, that's called slander. So think of it spoken word slander, S&S. If it's a written statement, it's called libel.
Right.
Okay. Or, so slander, libel combined, either one, that's a form of what's called defamation. So without too much further ado, when this topic came up, I thought to myself, I know a person that actually that was once sued for defamation.
Right.
And we both know the attorney that defended that person and what the outcome was. So I would like to now invite Todd Dan Druff Witteles to come on. So Todd, welcome to the Late Podcast.
Hello, Eric. Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Absolutely our pleasure. So Todd, if you wouldn't mind telling our close to 3,000 subscribers now, just give us a little history of what happened to you, who, Mike Postle is. Remember to use the word allegedly in front of everything. No, I'm just kidding about that. But by all means, Todd, take it away.
Okay, so as Eric mentioned a little bit ago, I run a website called Poker Fraud Alert, exactly as it sounds, pokerfraudalert.com. And among other things of what we do there is we discuss scams and scandals and frauds that occur in the worlds of poker and gambling. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that stuff that goes on. So that's something I've been doing now for many years. In fact, even before I started Poker Fraud Alert, which I started 12 years ago in 2012, I was even doing this for years before that. And I had always kind of loosely wondered if it'll ever occur to me where someone sues me over something I say, which I accuse them of doing, even if I'm correct with my allegations, or if I'm very likely correct. Will I ever get sued one day for defamation for making certain claims about someone that they've done something that I'm claiming is dishonest, and they would try to get back at me by filing a lawsuit? So I actually ended up in that situation back in 2020. So what occurred was one of the biggest scandals in poker, one of the best known scandals for sure, and that involved a guy named Mike Postle. And he was playing on a live-streamed poker game. That is a poker game which takes place where everybody is recorded playing at the table. It's run at like a 15-minute delay, so you're almost seeing it live. It's occurring 15 minutes before you're seeing it. And you can see everybody's hole cards. You know, they've got two cards down that only they know. Only each player knows what they have. But there's special tables that can read what the cards are. And it shows the viewer what the cards are. It makes it much more interesting for the viewer to watch when they can see what everybody has, even though all the players only know their own hands. And that's the way poker has been televised now for the last 20 years or so. So he was playing on a stream called Stones Live, which is at Stones Gambling Hall in the Sacramento area. And that was a stream that was getting more and more popular over time. And he was the biggest winner on that stream. Oh, wow. And for the most part, they weren't playing very high stakes, but he was crushing it just about every episode. And not only was he winning a lot of money there, but it was the way he was winning that was very unusual, to say the least, where he just always seemed to know when to make the right decision, especially if the pot was big. So yeah, if the pot was very small, sometimes he'd make the wrong decision, but it seemed like whenever a lot of money would go into the pot, he would always know whether he had the best hand or the worst hand. And he also knew if somebody was bluffing him, and he knew either to call if he could beat the person or re-raise the person, even with a worse hand, knowing that they'll fold if he knows they're bluffing. So if you know anything about poker, if you could know what your opponent has, then you'll crush them. If they don't know what you have and you know what they have for sure, there's just about no way they can win. So in 2019, December 2019, it was alleged by a woman named Veronica Brill, who was a commentator in the game, and sometimes played in the game too. It was alleged that Mike was somehow receiving the hole cards of his opponents. Obviously, there would have to be some kind of accomplice helping him, but that somehow this was being sent to him. And there were some various theories as to how he was receiving this information, but she was alleging that was going on, and that's why he was winning so much, and that's why in every big pot he was involved in, why he just always seemed to be right, why he just seemed to have this otherworldly ability to read what his opponents had, but it only seemed to occur on that live stream. It's not like he would go to the Bellagio and crush those games. It's not like he'd go to the Commerce Casino in L.A. and crush those games. So it seems like only on the Stones live stream was he the best player in the world.
Hang on. Let me just jump in really quick, because some of the terms you're going to hear you may not understand, or some of the audience. I'm going to also kind of explain certain things. But what Todd is describing about reading your opponent, kind of knowing the way Mike Postle was doing it was so good. A lot of elite players would call it a soul read. Like he's literally reading all the way into his soul, because no mortal human could have made that same call. You know, that's the idea behind it. But it's important for the audience to know that's how, like, beyond spectacular some of these reads were. Right. All right. They were soul reads.
It just became suspicious, but at that point, like,
yes. All right. Sorry. Go ahead, Todd. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and this occurred over like an 18-month period of time, and fortunately, all of these streams were saved, so you could go watch them at your leisure on Stone's website. So everybody was able to go back for the prior 18 months and see him playing, and it just seemed like every stream he was on, where he'd end up in these big pots, he would make these soul reads. He was just playing better than any poker player in history, as far as the number of times he'd be correct versus incorrect in big spots.
Do we know how much he won? Sorry.
Well, ask louder so I can hear you.
Do we know how much he won in those 18 months?
So, as I said, most of these games were not high-stakes games. The exact amount is in dispute, so because you have to go through a lot of videos and add this all up. So, and there's no way to check people's math unless you go watch 18 months worth of videos, which is hundreds of hours of footage. Anyway, some people claimed it was 250,000. One of Mike Postle's friends claimed it was about half of that, but it's got to be somewhere in that range between 125,000 and 250,000. Even one of his friends concedes it was 125,000. So at the stakes they were playing there, this was an amazing amount of money to win. And as I said, the way he won it was really crazy. So sometimes you can get really lucky in poker and you get dealt a really, really big hand against somebody else who has a really, really big hand.
Right.
And both you put a lot of money in and you just happen to be on the right end of it. So if you win a lot of money that way, that doesn't mean you're good. That just may mean you're lucky. It can also mean you're good, but it might just mean you're lucky. But if you win a whole lot of hands at lower stakes to add up to 250,000, and it just seems like you're never wrong when the pot gets big, obviously that's very suspicious. So especially in a live streamed game where the whole cards are readable, because the way these games work is a machine receives the data from the cards. It's called RFID, and it receives the data from the cards of what each card is. That's transmitted to a booth, and then the booth, they make the graphics to show on the screen what everybody's cards are. Now, it doesn't broadcast it until 15 minutes later, so it doesn't do any good for those who are watching to call their friends or something. But what if someone were to have an accomplice on the inside that can see this and then communicate it to a player in the game in real time? So that's what was being alleged against Mike Postle by this woman, Veronica Brill, who is a commentator and sometimes player in the game.
So, Karina, let me give you a bit more context.
Right.
In an 18-month period, assuming that he won the lower end of that estimate, around 125,000,
right,
that's about $7,000 a month net.
Right.
Which would be like earning $11,000 as a salary, like in any 9 to 5, in a higher end job. So even though the stakes of that game, because some high stakes poker games are nosebleed, amounts.
Yeah.
But even in this smaller stream game, I want you to just consider, you're talking about an average of $7,000 a month cash every,
that's
pretty
income.
consistent.
That's a job.
That's more than a lot of people make.
Yeah.
And honestly, in the Sacramento area, that's like 25% more than like what it would be to like live in LA cost wise and all that. So just to get some more context.
And this isn't going every day. This is something that goes a few hours a week.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're playing 40 hours a week to earn this type of money. Yeah. So to play low stakes and win that type of money in that period of time, just playing once or twice a week is crazy. So anyway, the question immediately became at that point, is this possible? Did this really happen? Because up till that point, in all the years of live streamed poker, there has never been a verified instance of this type of thing occurring. I'd always thought of it. In fact, I've even appeared on certain live stream games. I even once appeared in that Stones game. Mike Postle was not in the game with me, but I actually did appear in one of their streamed games a year before that. And I also have been on other streamed games. And I always had in the back of my mind, like, what if there is an insider? Obviously someone in the booth can see my cards. So what if they are communicating this in some way to somebody at the table? So I always did worry about this kind of in the back of my mind. But I said, you know what, this has been going for so many years. There's never once been a scandal like this. So it's probably just paranoia. So this was the first time that there seemed to be credible evidence here. And when I say evidence, there wasn't a smoking gun. So it's not like they found the device he was receiving the cards on and grabbed it and proved it. So that didn't occur because Veronica just accused him on Twitter. And of course, at that point, he's not going to turn over his device to anybody or anything like that.
Right.
And unfortunately, the California gaming laws and the regulation of California gaming is very, very weak. Basically, the California Gaming Commission really only cares about whether these rooms run the games they're allowed to run and pay their taxes. They don't really care so much about players getting cheated. Right. So there wasn't really much that could be done from a criminal complaint standpoint. But what people were doing was calling it out, and they were discussing the hands where Mike Postle would play in a way that people just didn't think was possible if he didn't know the cards of his opponent. And there was a guy named Joey Ingram who sat there for like 11 hours a day doing a YouTube stream of analyzing all of Mike Postle's past play and just going through it and showing the different hands and commenting on it. And so various people got involved in just really, really breaking this whole thing down, discussing the hands as they play these old streams they had recorded over the last 18 months.
Right.
Mike Postle himself started to give a few responses, but he didn't really say very much, and then he just shut down and stopped answering anybody. And I actually didn't get right involved in it. It actually took me a few days. Where normally I'd be right on a story like this, but I just wasn't able to get to it for a few days. And then once I got into it, I decided I agreed with what the people were saying on Twitter. And by this point, it was already a huge story. Mm-hmm. But I agreed with people's assessment from my more than 20 years of experience playing poker myself, and most of that time being a professional player. So while I didn't have any smoking gun proof against Postle, and nobody did, just from watching all these hours of footage, it just wouldn't have made sense to me in any other way besides him knowing his opponent's hole cards.
Right.
And obviously that's cheating, and obviously if that's what was occurring, then this was very bad what he did. So I basically posted that I agreed with it, that this was what I believed happened too. So then about a year later, and by this point, pretty much everybody in poker, with only a very few exceptions, believed he was guilty. There was not much debate about this one. There's been some other stories in poker where people have been alleged to have been cheating where it's kind of split, or maybe it's even like 70-30 as far as the percentage of guilt versus innocence. This one, it had to be like 99-1. I'm not even kidding. Like this was almost unanimously believed in the poker world because they had all these hours of footage, because nobody could find a big hand where he made the wrong move. Mm-hmm. It just seemed like it had to be, even without the smoking gun proof. So about a year later.
Well, I'm sorry, Karina, what was that? Hang on, Todd. Karina had a question. What were you asking?
While everyone was like basically talking about him and believing that it was wrong, did he keep playing throughout that time? Or did he take a stop when people started accusing him of that?
He stopped, and also the Stones live stream stopped. They ran one more live stream without him.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then they just got trolled so much in their own chat that they decided they couldn't continue with this. They were really running it to promote their own card room.
Right.
And once this pretty much stained it, they realized it was going to be a negative to them to keep running this. It would just keep reminding people of what occurred there. So they stopped running it. And to my knowledge, they haven't brought it back. And this was 5 years ago. So anyway, about a year afterwards, in October of 2020, someone who has some kind of job of looking at what lawsuits come across and find anything notable. I'm forgetting exactly what that person's role was, but it was someone who would look at pretty much every lawsuit that was filed in that area. Was aware of the Mike Postle story, which by then had been covered a lot in local media. So it wasn't just a poker discussion anymore. By that point, it had been discussed in local Sacramento media, and it was even discussed on ESPN briefly. So there was someone who saw a lawsuit was filed by Mike Postle, and it was against, I think, about 12 defendants, some of them companies, but mostly individuals. And this person sent this to me. And it was especially interesting to me because I was one of the named defendants. And that was the first time I've ever had that experience. In fact, that was actually the first time I was ever sued in my life. And by that point, I was getting close to 50 years old, and I'd never been sued once for anything. And now I was being sued for $330 million for defamation. So that's a pretty intimidating number. Obviously, if I were to lose that, I would be broke many times over. So that was very shocking to see. And I especially thought it was shocking because I was never one of the lead figures in this whole thing. Well, I agreed with the lead figures, and I said I agreed with them. And pretty much everybody in poker said that they agreed with those that spent the most time on this.
Right.
But as I said, by the time I got involved in it, other people, such as this Joey Ingram, had put so many hours into analyzing all these hands. All I could really do is kind of just talk about what was being discussed by these guys. So much investigation was already done in that short period of time. There was no point for me to really delve deep into it. So I basically just said, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm agreeing with the assessment of the rest of the poker world. That was really pretty much what I said.
Right.
And I got thrown into it anyway because I don't know for sure, but I think I was thrown in because I just was fairly outspoken about my beliefs, and they just decided to throw me in there, even though, as I've said a lot of times, if I were never born, Mike Postle's reputation would be identical because I really was not a major figure in this. But it doesn't matter. I was still sued for defamation.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, what do I do at this point? I've got to think, I wasn't served yet. I just was sent the front page of this complaint by a third party. But what do I saw it was real, though. What do I do at this point?
Now, all right, so let me jump in. So you'll understand in a minute why that's important, the idea that he wasn't served yet.
Right.
Because as you'll soon learn as we progress in this timeline, nobody got served.
Oh.
They filed the lawsuit. They, meaning Mike Postle and his attorneys, who, by the way, this firm here in Beverly Hills. I mean, I know the guy.
Oh.
Or I know that firm, I should say. I know of them. Anyway, he filed this lawsuit with this Beverly Hills lawyer, and they did nothing. Right. And you'll understand why in a minute. That came out later. That was intentional. But,
okay.
All right. But okay. So Todd is now one of this long list of defendant, these cast of character defendants. Right. But we're talking about ESPN, like Disney was sued in this. Todd, Daniel Negreanu is a very famous poker player. Like, certain names you hear. Haralabus, this other guy has got like the most weird, unique sounding name in the world, but he's well known. On and on. This guy, Joey Ingram or Chicago Joey. And on and on and on. A whole slew of very well-known or large corporations or well-known individuals and poker players, and of course the original whistleblower Veronica Brill, who later we understood was really the target of this fury, right? But everybody got lumped in for a while. But okay, all right. So go ahead, Todd. Sorry.
Yeah. So I wondered, what do I do about this? So I could just sit and wait until I get served. Now, at the time, I didn't think or know that there was never an intention to serve anybody. Right. So I really thought the service was going to come. The question was, do I wait for that and then go forward with defending myself, or should I try to see what I could do immediately? Because there's a number of reasons you don't want a $330 million lawsuit hanging over your head, whether you're served or not. Right. Some for emotional reasons and some for practical reasons, like if you want to get a loan or anything like that, you have to disclose if you're named in a lawsuit, and a $330 million lawsuit can make an impact. So I spoke with Eric about this, and I asked him what he thought I should do. And what we ended up doing was I ended up actually retaining Eric to defend me in this lawsuit. And when I first spoke to him, it was just pretty much as a friend, and to ask him what his opinion was I should do here. But he ended up being the lawyer that I retained to defend this whole matter. And we decided to go on the offensive from the defensive standpoint. So basically, once the lawsuit's filed, and it really was filed, it just hadn't been served. Right. And I didn't know this. I learned this from Eric, that your attorney can just accept service for you even if you were never actually served. So that's what Eric went and did. And we went after it from the standpoint of what's known as anti-SLAPP. And I don't know if you've discussed that on this podcast already at some point.
Not yet, but we're gonna. So all right, that's a good segue to jump in. So Todd's right. What we did was we took the offensive approach and essentially what's called an acknowledgement and receipt of the lawsuit. Mm-hmm. I submitted that and filed it in the Sacramento court where the case was filed. Mm-hmm. And this is what's called a SLAPP lawsuit, SLAPP. SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. Mm-hmm. And there was a trend for a while. This goes back, many years. There's a trend for a while, especially in California. Nevada has a statute similar, but in California, this is the Hollywood state, celebrities, all that. People were suing people just to shut them up, right? Basically. And so the California legislature then enacted an anti-SLAPP statute, right? Which basically is that if you get sued for basically exercising your First Amendment right, and the attempt is to chill your free speech or basically shut you up, you can file this special motion to strike or this anti-SLAPP motion. And if the party filing the motion prevails, the losing party then has to pay all the other parties' attorney's fees and the lawsuit's over.
Right.
So we reached out first to Mike Postle's Beverly Hills attorneys, said, guys, we're going to file this motion if you don't drop Todd. I don't care what you do with anybody else. I want my client out.
Right.
And here's the authority and here's the case law. Here's what we're going to say. Now's your chance. Stupidly, they turned us down. So now back to Todd.
Wait, before you get
go ahead.
I have a question. What was your first reaction when you heard of this case, when he came to you?
After I stopped laughing?
Yeah.
No, honestly, it was very, very ridiculous.
Right. No, even the number's ridiculous.
All of it's ridiculous. All of it, especially as it relates to Todd.
Right.
These are postings on a website that happened after the whole scandal broke. Right. But okay. So honestly, my first reaction after I kind of took a minute and calmed myself and stopped laughing was, okay. And I said, Todd, we can do one of two things. You can sit back and wait. And I understand that at this point in time, we didn't know that the non-service was intentional. Right. So the idea was, okay, we can just sit back, wait till you're served, and then we'll deal with it. Or I can accept it for you. I can send it. I can file an acknowledgement, and you know what? Let's go after this guy. Right. And also, Veronica was getting her own counsel. There was a GoFundMe set up for her.
Oh wow!
Right, not for Todd, right, or anybody else, but for her. Right. So my thought was, you know what? We really need to get you out because any lawyer really has a duty to his client. Right. So I don't care what Veronica does or who she hires. I don't care what the other people do. I got to get Todd out.
Yep.
So the decision was, you know what? Let's just go after this. We gave him a shot. They don't want to drop you. And I don't mean this insultingly, but it's like, Todd, you're the low man on this totem pole as far as like what you actually did in participation to this. How would they not? But they didn't. So, okay. That's what you get. Right. So here we go. All right. So what happens next, Todd?
Yeah. So that was very strange. I was surprised that this was the initial result, that they were refusing to drop me out. I was surprised to be named as part of this. And so not only was I one of the least known people of the parties that were named, but also the least involved as far, even if you were to say that Mike Postle was wrong there, which he wasn't, but even if you were to agree with him, it was clear that I was the least involved of everybody there. And so all Eric asked for when he had the conference with Mike's attorneys, who of course were taking the decision from him, and all that was being offered was that just drop me out, not drop the whole thing, but drop me out of the case.
Right.
And we won't come after you for any fees incurred from defending this and discussing this up to this point, including this conference. So basically, whatever money was spent on legal fees getting here to drop me out, we won't go after you. That's the agreement, and you just drop me at this point, and we just walk away. And they said no, which was pretty shocking to me because this was a junk case. It was very clear it was a junk case.
Right.
And I was the least prominent and least involved person of like 12 defendants. So it's not even like that if they drop me, then there's hardly anyone left to sue. Even if he's trying to make a statement by the lawsuit, it didn't make sense to have me in there. So I was very surprised that they just refused, and really we weren't getting a coherent answer as to why I was being left in there. But I was left in there, and that was up to him to decide that. So then we had to go forward with the anti-SLAPP motion to get this dismissed. And, so basically what we had to show was that this lawsuit was being filed against me in order to suppress my speech. That is basically a junk lawsuit meant to silence me and didn't actually have any merit. And then it can be dismissed right there. And something we actually had in our favor was the fact that Mike Postle was at least some form of a public figure, at least a limited purpose public figure in poker, meaning that this is someone who has intentionally put himself as a public figure in the realm of poker, which then would legally allow more to be said about him without a concern for defamation.
Right,
This is the reason why, if you get on Twitter and write something bad about Donald Trump or Joe Biden, they can't sue you anywhere nearly as easily for defamation as someone who's just a private citizen.
Right.
So it's along the same line. So defamation, it's very, very hard to sue someone. It's very hard for a public figure to sue someone for defamation. Basically, the public figure would have to show that the person saying it not only got it wrong, but that they knew that they were lying at the time they said it, which of course is very hard to prove because you can't be in someone's head. You can't show what they were thinking. The only way is if you can find some proof that they knew that they were saying something false.
All right, so hang on. Wait, hang on a second. Let me just jump in really quick and explain why that's important and how Mike Postle kind of shot himself. Mm-hmm. So Mike went on a very popular podcast, and the host was a man named Mike Matusow, or Mike the Mouth Matusow. And Mike's got a big following. He's been in poker for a long time, kind of a controversial guy, you know, and very loudmouth, very opinionated. Mm-hmm. And part of our motion, our anti-slap motion, referenced the fact that he went on this big podcast to this large audience and described himself as, you know, they made me out to be the Wonder Boy and, hey, come play against one of the best players in the world, and kept promoting him as this poker god. And he said himself openly, and I allowed that narrative, right? So he participated in his own sort of public persona. Now, the reason Todd brought that up, like he was saying, is when you're a private party, you have a different expectation of privacy than a celebrity does, or a public figure, or quasi-public figure. Even like minor league baseball players or coaches are considered public figures for purposes of defamation. You don't have to be like the most recognizable guy on the street. But in this case, Mike Postle appears on this live streamed poker game for the last year and a half. Then he goes on this very popular YouTube podcast where he's out there, you know, talking about all this. And we reference that in our motion later as a means to advance our position that he doesn't get the maximum benefit or protections. Actually, Todd does, because Postle is a public figure, basically. All right. So sorry. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah. And when he was on that podcast, and he was on that podcast to discuss the allegations against him, when he was on there, he was conceding that the Stones live stream was promoting him as like the best in the world, the best ever, a wonder boy, and that he went along with the narrative. He actually said he went along with the narrative that they were promoting him this way. So it's so absurd that someone could go along with having themselves promoted on a very well-watched poker stream as being the best ever, a wonder boy, an amazing player, and then try to sue people for questioning why this guy is so good, because this isn't just a guy playing in a card room and people hear that he's winning and start spreading rumors he's a cheater. This is someone who's being promoted as this special player, this guy who's just somehow making these amazing moves that nobody understands. And so, of course, if you're going to promote yourself this way on a public stream, of course people have the right to question how you're so good and if it's possible you're cheating. So that's why it's absurd that when he knowingly does this, knowingly makes a public figure of himself, that he could sue people for then questioning how he's really doing so well, especially given the suspicious elements of the whole thing. So the fact that he went on that podcast and admitted to these things, not only just going on that podcast himself shows that he's making himself into a public figure, but he already was a public figure, and it was admitting that he went along with Stones pretty much making him into a poker celebrity. He
was okay with it when it was positive. That was the thing. He was only okay with it when it was positive.
Well, remember, this scandal had already broken. Right. And then he goes on this Mike the Mouth podcast to talk about this. Talk about these allegations and what he tried to do. But again, it was probably very ill-advised. If he checked with his attorney, let me put it like this. If I was repping him at that point, I would have told him not to go on anything or talk about anything. Whatever. I don't know if his attorneys gave him advice or not, but needless to say, he went on there. And that's the whole point. The fact that because it was already done, right, that it had already broken, he just, again, he made our job a little bit easier by continuing to go out there,
I was okay with
and all adding to his popularity, or his,
he thought he was so popular,
what he considered popular in his own mind, maybe. So yeah, that was actually that kind of helped us because we actually referenced the things he said on that podcast and put a footnote link to the YouTube broadcast of it, so the judge who ruled on our motion could verify it. Right. So that kind of, so he gave us a bit more of the ammo. I mean, I think we had him dead to rights anyway, to be honest, but it didn't hurt that he kind of put himself out there more.
Making it worse for himself.
Yeah, I was pretty shocked that he said a lot of what he did, not just putting himself out there, but just admitting how much he went along with Stones promoting him as this amazing player. It was very clear this wasn't just a guy trying to privately play poker and then got attacked and unfairly accused of something. This is someone who really wanted the world to take notice of his poker play and then just doesn't want anyone to talk about it in a negative way. So you can't do that. And then you'll never win a defamation suit doing that. So that really helped us. I remember when he appeared on that, and I went back and listened to it. I said, "Oh my God, this is going to really help us." And I sent it over to Eric, and obviously that became part of our motion. So then came the whole legal wrangling, and from there it was very strange. Nobody was ever served. So Veronica accepted service the same way that we did, but all the other defendants never retained attorneys and never got served. So they didn't do anything. And when this whole thing was eventually over, which we'll get to, these people basically got out of it without having to lift a finger because they were never served. And then he also dropped his attorney, right? Because his attorney dropped him.
Oh, okay.
And put in papers to do that, I believe, for non-payment, but the attorneys were then gone fairly quickly. They didn't seem to do a lot of work on this whole thing. It looked like this whole thing was slapped together very quickly and filed, and then just kind of sat there, and then all of a sudden the attorneys were gone, and then he was basically representing himself for most of the way, but seemed to be getting some help with preparing and filing legal paperwork behind the scenes with people who were not officially representing him, but were giving him help for various reasons. So this dragged on, and he kept delaying it and asking for more time, and he doesn't have an attorney. And the problem was the court was giving him this time because they give more leeway to those who are representing themselves that are not legal professionals. So this did drag a little while we were trying to get this anti-SLAPP motion heard and hopefully granted and have be dismissed off the case. And of course, while this is all going on, the legal fees rack up. Right. Which it's very important because we weren't trying to drag it out. We were trying to end it as quickly as possible. So you'd be surprised, in fact, how quickly Eric initially responded to the summons and how quickly he responded and filed it. I mean, he was very quick with this whole thing, and the entire way we were trying to end this as quickly as we could and with the lowest amount of cost possible. And it was Mike who was delaying. And of course, if you're going to keep delaying and asking for delays and have hearings for delays and delays are granted, well, of course, the legal fees are going to go up. Right. So that's what was happening. And I'll let Eric then tell everyone what happened in this lawsuit.
So all this time, and by the way, there are several poker media outlets. Right. There are a couple very well-known seasoned reporters that report to the poker media, and these stories kind of go to different sites. And so they're constantly following what's going on, and we're giving quotes, and this whole thing, like Postle asked for more time again, and whatever. So finally, we're very, very close to the hearing date, right? The court gave him a couple of weeks, and you need some time to get a new lawyer, get a lawyer. You've got a couple of weeks to get a lawyer, all right. Mike, of course, he never gets a new lawyer. And right as the hearing is about, maybe we're a few days away or a week away or so from our hearing date, all of a sudden out of nowhere, we get served with notice that Mike Postle has dismissed the lawsuit.
Are you serious?
Yes, but let me tell you why this is the second dumbest thing he could have done. The first dumbest was suing to begin with. Right. Okay? But again, if he had spent 5 minutes on Google or had any kind of attorney conversation, he would know that when you have a anti-SLAPP motion pending against you, a special motion to strike, and you dismiss, you lose automatically. Exactly. So we get our attorney's fees, right? Because imagine anybody could just do that then, right? Yeah. I could sue you for $500 million, $1 billion, whatever. Say you defamed me, you this, you that, cause you to spend 40, 50 grand in attorney's fees. And then at the last minute, like, yeah, you know what? I'll let you off.
It's like, no, now you owe my fees. I have to pay the lawyer that I got.
Okay, right. So you know what, buddy? Fuck that. And fuck you. That's not how this works. So myself and Veronica's attorney, although not in conjunction with each other, separately, we basically file a motion for fees and costs. Say, hey, this would have been granted, right? The court likely would have given us this win, and this is what this cost us, and this is what we want. Right. Right? So we get there, we go to the hearing, Postle himself showed up by himself, this is on Zoom. Right. He made an argument along the lines of this is really about Veronica, because Veronica had a GoFundMe that covered her attorney's fees. And again, because he's not a lawyer, he doesn't understand. So he says, well, Veronica's attorneys fees were already paid. I shouldn't have to pay those fees because she already got money to pay their fees. It's like, I know, you don't understand, buddy. You have to reimburse whoever. I don't care who the money came from. Right. The whole point is she wouldn't have to spend it, any of it, if you didn't do if you didn't do this stupid thing. So anyway, needless to say, he didn't win. Right. We won our motion. We were awarded fees. It was $27,000 roughly. We entered notice of entry of judgment. And as of today, I checked, with interest accrued, he owes us around 35, hasn't paid a dime. And we're trying to, we chase him down here and there. Right. I'm pretty sure he moved out of state. He was found a couple months ago in some tournament in Biloxi, Mississippi.
So he's still playing out there.
Yeah, but this is the best. He wore like those fucking like costume glasses and nose, like to try pretend like it was like some kind of disguise.
Oh my God.
But anybody that followed this knew exactly who that was. Right. And if I'm not mistaken, he was in a slot tournament too, not long in Vegas, using his real name. Right. But like,
but he owes people in these lawsuits.
Yeah. So right now he has judgments against him by me on behalf of Todd and Veronica, the other defendant that went after him for this anti-slap. So this is a real life account of how defamation can go wrong if you really don't understand what you're doing. Again, that was the other thing too. Sorry, there were a lot of rumors that there was some kind of documentary being made or some kind of movie deal for him, and the lawsuit was filed probably to preserve the statute of limitations, because in defamation, you only have 1 year. So likely he filed it just to hold that and preserve it. And that's why he wasn't going to serve anybody. By the way, just so between you, me, Todd, and the couple 3,000 or so that are listening, judges hate that shit. Okay, if you file a lawsuit and you just sit back and don't serve, eventually a judge is going to issue what's called an order to show cause, why the case shouldn't be dismissed for lack of prosecution, and why the attorney who did it shouldn't be sanctioned for just not doing anything. So that wasn't a great strategy to begin with, but nonetheless. So Todd prevailed. Mike Postle owes Todd still to this day $35-some thousand with interest. I want to make it very clear that it's not easy to collect from a guy that doesn't have much. But we're not giving up. And I will tell you, I will die before I let this go. I'm just straight up. I mean, honest. It really. No, I know some people they think it's foolish, like principle above personality or whatever. Not with this bullshit. No. There will be a day. He made
a lawsuit and then realized that you guys were going to join and he was going to have to pay. And he was like, oh, never mind.
That's what he tried. But remember, he only did it originally to preserve the statute. And maybe this would have been part of some film deal. And there were like these weird people. Like there was a guy that had like some magazine that was published back in the day that was writing these like protection pieces about Mike and what a great guy he is. And there was drama with an ex-wife and potential abuse, and the wife was like strung out, and he has a daughter, and the daughter lives with him. We don't know. All that stuff comes out, had nothing to do with this, which is the point.
Well, they were distracting.
But the point is like that. But that's again, when you're pro per litigant, you don't understand. Like, so why would anybody care if you're a single dad?
Exactly.
Because you still went after these guys for $330 million, like stupidly. So if anything, maybe go ahead, Todd. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, what's crazy is I actually had a private discussion with him recently on the Twitter direct messages, and I've maintained the entire way that despite all of this, because he's maintaining now, he's been speaking out recently, all these years later, he's maintaining that he was innocent, that Veronica and some other people framed him, and that Veronica did this to increase her status in poker, and that that there's a lot more to the story people don't know, and that more consequences are coming. He implies but doesn't directly say that people are going to be sued again, which doesn't make a lot of sense, especially since he still owes these judgments. But I said to him, despite everything, despite the money that he owes that he's never paid, the court judgment that's owed to me that he's not paying, despite the fact that he sued me for $330 million, I said to him, if you have proof of any of this, or if you can even show me one hand where you put in a lot of money when you were actually behind and likely to get a call from your opponent and lose the hand, show me even one of those. And preferably show me more than one of those, since there's 18 months of footage. And you've had now 5 years to go through it, so you can't say you didn't have time. So show it to me, and if it turns out that I evaluated this incorrectly back in 2019, I'll change my mind. I'll even come forward and say, hey, I was wrong if you can show me. Because he keeps saying that that there was an unfair narrative put out and people just went along with what Joey Ingram and other people said. They didn't think for themselves. And I said, I always think for myself. The show I put out there, Poker Fraud Alert Radio, the whole point is I don't ever go along with what the crowd says or what people will like for me to say or what will make me popular. I always say what I believe to be the truth, and I will research what I'm talking about and sometimes go against the popular narrative. So I even said now, even at this point, if you want to show me something, show me. And of course he doesn't. Right. Because I don't believe there's anything he can show, because I believe my initial conclusion about him was correct, and he just doesn't like it. And that's why. Otherwise, why wouldn't he, with 5 years to go through the footage himself, why wouldn't he put out some counter arguments
and try to
show
clear
that
his
he
name
was innocent at this point?
So that pretty much is the Mike Postle saga where we are today.
Right.
We're still actively trying to collect this judgment.
Mm-hmm.
It continues to accrue interest. Mike Postle has not reached out to me at this point, not in probably 3 years,
right,
about any kind of attempt to repay this judgment or work out anything at all. I'm going to give you a little bit of just interesting knowledge, just so you know. So Poker Fraud Alert Radio was the very first podcast I ever appeared on as a guest or as a commentator.
Wow.
It was
full circle moment, huh?
Well, it was at least 6 years ago, because Mike Postle's lawsuit was in 2020.
Right.
And I had appeared on it before that, and that's where Todd and I kind of became friends, and we were talking more, and we actually turned out we kind of have a lot in common, like our ages and backgrounds and things like that. But that was and it was because I had listened to this other show that's no longer being produced, and they name dropped Todd's show, right? Poker Fraud Alert. I thought, wow, that's a pretty interesting name. I like poker, and I'm in the law. I like fraudulent stuff. It's interesting. Right. So I subscribe and I download the first episode, and it's just like 6:001 or 6:01 point. I'm like, 60 minutes? All right, well, okay, it's about an hour. No, and that sounds like 6 hours. I'm like, no, that can't be right. And then I realized like all the episodes are like that, but it is honestly, it can be really riveting.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times sometimes it takes me 2 or 3 days, but to go through them, especially if I'm driving to see my family in Vegas or whatever, like this long drive. Yeah. So, and Todd's been doing this for a long time. Todd was on 60 Minutes, dealing with some other online poker scandals and gambling scandals. And Todd has been fighting the good fight really for years. And like us, this is not where he's monetizing this. This is, he legitimately cares about this community and the people in it, and, these games should be run honestly and fairly, and, the best players win.
Exactly.
Poker often is, a lot of people don't understand that it really is a skill game. There's so many variations of poker in different ways.
Right.
Some people are great at one style, no limit versus limit hold'em versus Omaha versus, Big O or 08, whatever. There's so many. Right, 7-card stud. That's what I grew up playing, 7-card stud. Nobody plays it anymore, barely. But I love that game.
Never even heard of that.
That's what I'm saying. Right? But anyway, so if I could ask Todd, why don't you, if you wouldn't mind, tell the audience where they can find you, where they can find Poker Fraud Alert, what to do if they find themselves in a weird situation, they think they got screwed by some gaming app. I mean, we're talking about. Listen, Todd has exposed these online guys that do these like bullshit poker clubs, these like in-app purchases on games. People that. There's the Vegas Casino Talk or Gambling Talk, another forum he runs. So, Todd, please, without further ado, tell everybody where they can find you.
Okay, well, thank you. So, this is something I just do as a service to the poker and gambling communities. The site's not monetized. In fact, it loses money. It loses money kind of by design because I don't want to take ads from online poker sites and then not be able to speak about them freely because I'm taking money from them. So this is really just something I do to help people out, to keep people informed. And I cover a whole list of topics, just anything I find interesting that I think the audience will find interesting regarding poker or gambling or even just general Las Vegas topics. I will discuss on there. And as Eric said, it is a very long show. Sometimes it's intimidating. People will download it and it's 6 hours, 8 hours. They go, oh my God, how can I listen to this? But there's timestamps for everything. So you can just jump to the topics you want to listen to if you don't want to listen to all of them. Or you can do what Eric does, just kind of split it among days, and it actually goes by a lot faster than you think. And I try to make everything interesting and relevant for the listener. And something I always try to do is keep it to where it's not overly complicated, and it does not require a lot of knowledge of poker or of gambling or of Las Vegas. I explain everything to the novice listener.
Right.
Because I know there's people who listen who know a whole lot about the subject and those who don't know much at all. So I have people that listen that eventually get their mom into listening or their wife into listening. And these people, sometimes have no connection to this world at all.
Right.
But they come to appreciate the show because it explains everything and it's easy to understand, even if you don't know much about that world. And I try to really select topics that not only are going on of the day, but that people are going to want to hear about. So you can find the website. It's pokerfraudalert.com, exactly as it sounds, pokerfraudalert.com. If you don't want to go to the website, you can just simply find the show, because the website also has a forum on it. And it's an old school message forum. I know people don't use those as much these days. They tend to use things like Reddit or Facebook or whatever, but we still have an old school type forum there. But if you just want to listen to it in podcast form, which is what Eric mostly does, you can just look for Poker Fraud Alert Radio. It's 3 words, Poker Fraud Alert, then radio. And you can look this up pretty much any podcasting app that you can think of, and we're on there. We're also on YouTube, so you can find us on YouTube. And I started posting the shows on YouTube as of September. The show's been running for about over 12 years now, but I just added it to YouTube by request in September. So we're pretty much everywhere if you want to listen, and if you'd like to give it a try. And if you have ever been ripped off by an individual or a company, a casino, whatever, and want to tell me your story or want to come on the show yourself, I'll be glad to have you on. I'll just put anybody on there who's got an interesting story. You don't have to be a big name in poker gambling. You have to be anybody who's known it all. Just if something's happened to you and you'd like to say it, or if you'd even like to send me the information and have me discuss your story, I can do that too. So, and I make a phone number to text me anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Oh, okay.
I make it public, so anybody who wants to text and get a hold of me that way can always do so. Mm-hmm. And so that phone number is 775-372-8355, and it actually spells out 775 fraud 55 if you look on the phone.
Okay.
But 775-372-8355 if you do want to bring anything to my attention to look into, or if you want to come on the show. And as I said, you can look it up, Poker Fraud Alert Radio, and give it a listen. Just don't be too intimidated by the length. That's what sometimes people are a little afraid to try to listen to an 8-hour show. So, right. Oh my God, I can't get into this enough time. You don't need to take 8 hours.
That's what she said. Don't be intimidated by the length. No good. Sorry, that was a bad dad joke. Do you have 5 more minutes? I want to ask a special favor. We did an episode on gaming, and I tried my best to recall the story about the Indian gaming casino and the car and the jackpot and that woman. I know you covered it extensively. Could you just give our audience again a little bit of that story, because I'm sure I butchered it.
Yes. Well, I'm actually forgetting which casino it was. This was a number of years ago now, mm-hmm. But unfortunately, with these Indian casinos, you really do not have much legal recourse.
Right.
When anything happens there. That's something to know. So if you go gamble in any casino in California, I'm talking about like a real casino with slot machine.
Right. Oh.
Did we just lose you, Todd? Did we lose him?
We did.
We may have just lost Todd. Okay, well, we'll give it a minute to see if he's able to come back on.
Okay.
In the meantime, I'll say, as long as we're talking about like scams and defamation and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went to Starbucks this morning, to get coffee. Mm-hmm. There was a guy who was calling the police and wanted to do a police report at Starbucks. Said his coffee got mugged. I still win.
This was a dad joke because you don't go to Starbucks.
Wait, he's calling back. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, we dropped you for a second. We got cut off.
Yeah, okay. Should I start again with this?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the problem with these Indian casinos, and it's important that people realize this when they go play at them. This is any casino that's owned by an Indian tribe and sits on Indian land, and that's pretty much all of them in California that have slot machines, blackjack, stuff like that.
Right.
Then you really have no rights. So if anything goes wrong there, if you wanted to sue them, you would have to do so in their own tribal court, which doesn't make a lot of sense that you would sue them in their own court.
Right.
So you always have to be aware that you have no protection in these places, which is different than somewhere like Las Vegas, where you can go to the Nevada Gaming Commission and usually get a fair ruling.
Right.
So something that went on at one of the Indian casinos involved a car, where it was a promotion where you could win a car if you win some kind of drawing. So you play there, and then the longer you play, the more entries you get for this drawing, and then they randomly select one, and the lucky winner gets a new car. I think the new car was worth like $35,000, $40,000, something like that. I forgot what kind of car it is.
Right.
So a woman won the car, and they brought her to a back room, and they tried to get her to take a cash payment instead of the car, but nowhere near the value of the car. They tried to get her to take like a $20,000 cash payment. And they tried to reason with it. They said, well, look, do you really need this car? I mean, you probably already have all the cars you need, right? Like, do you really need this new car that the second you drive it off the lot is going to depreciate? Why don't you just take the cash? You know, that's what most people do. It'll be much better for you. And, you know, do you understand that you're going to have to pay taxes on the retail value of the car? And again, it's probably a car that you normally wouldn't buy. So, you know, by the time you pay the taxes, it's, you know, think of how much you're going to lose there. So again, why not just take this lesser amount of money? And that's what most people do.
They were gaslighting her.
So she said, no, I'll take the car.
Yeah.
Well, they weren't happy with that. They kept pressing for her to take the cash settlement.
Right.
But she wasn't budging. Now, technically, they could have just said, well, then we're just not giving it to you. But that would really, really look terrible if they just outright went back on her winning the promotion. So they, when she wouldn't budge, they spent a long time trying to browbeat her into doing this, but she just would not budge. So then they said, okay, well, hang on. We just need to verify some things regarding your win. So what they found by going through the footage of her playing was that someone with her, her friend or her mother, I forgot who it was, but someone who was with her had very briefly played on her card. Maybe when she went to the bathroom, the friend or the relative kept spinning the slot machine, and then she came back and played herself.
Right.
So that's never considered to be a big deal.
Right.
Now, what could be considered, I wouldn't say a big deal, but where there could be an issue is if, let's say, a bunch of people came together and they all played on one card in order to make it look like that it was one player who was a bigger gambler than they really were, because a bunch of people put their play all on one card. That could be a problem. That not so much of a criminal problem, but more of a problem to where something like this could be in jeopardy. But not if almost all of the play was really her. If you know they have this on camera, and just for a few minutes, someone that she was with spun on her card. That's not a big deal. But they used that technicality to say that she broke the rules, and therefore she doesn't get anything.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they disqualified her based upon that ticky-tack violation, and that was definitely a way for them to give the middle finger to her for refusing to take the lesser prize. And that's really dirty, because here they bring you back, they try to give you an offer that they're trying to pitch to you as mutually beneficial. They don't say that, but you know, it's implied here, like, hey, we don't have to spend as much on the car, and you don't have to take a car you don't really need, and you just take a cash settlement instead. So it's one thing to offer that.
Right.
But when the person refuses, then just give them the car. Instead, not only did they sit there for like 45 minutes trying to browbeat this into her, but when she refused, they actually found a way to just not reward her at all. That's and the sad thing is, other than publicizing this and making them look bad, there wasn't anything she could do because of the situation where these are not regulated by the state. So,
this is exactly why I said before, and why I told you privately. If I'm ever in an Indian casino and I'm playing, it will only be poker in the poker room.
Yeah.
I will not touch a table game or a slot. I don't care, no matter under any circumstance. I'll wait. You know, sometimes you wait an hour until a seat opens up. I'll wait and I'll play free slots on my phone or whatever before I'll put a nickel into an Indian casino slot machine.
Yeah, and they can detain you for a long time too, which can be another problem. Where if they claim they're suspecting you broke the law, they can detain you, and it's their own police force. So you really have very few rights there, and that's something that everybody should know. And really, the only thing you can do afterwards is try to shame them on social media. So it's something people should always be aware of with these Indian casinos.
So their police and security are all their own?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, all the tribal police.
I did not
the
know
whole
that.
thing. And yeah, they can detain you. They can basically tell you go fuck off, and there's nothing you can do. And there is no redress in any U.S. court. You go to tribal court.
Right.
And then whatever the fucking spirit elders are going to tell you, sorry, guilty or whatever. Yeah. Right. But yeah, that's it. You have no rights.
That sucks.
And that was a mistake in the way these were set up in the first place, because the whole reason for Indian gaming was something to give back to the Indian tribes with the belief that they were mistreated many, many years ago before any of us were born. And that's the reason that they're currently in a lot of poverty in these tribes. So whether that's something that you agree with or not, this was the goal of the Indian gaming, was to help these communities and basically give them a leg up where they can run these casinos, whereas nobody else is allowed to in these states. So that was the purpose. But if they're going to do that, then there should have been some agreement on the other end where, okay, we're going to let you guys do this, but you have to let us, the state, regulate you. You can't regulate yourself. And had the Indian casinos refused this, then the state could have just said, okay, well, you're not going to have any casinos then. How about that? So the problem was this got established where they were just allowed to regulate everything themselves. And that never works out. You never want a situation where a casino is answering to itself. That's a disaster, especially if they own the police and everything else criminally as well.
So that's what I was talking about, how, these are the kinds of topics that get discussed on Todd's web podcast and on the forums. All of this stuff is super interesting. So Todd, let me again, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. I really appreciate you. I appreciate taking the time to be with us. Again, pokerfraudalert.com, Poker Fraud Alert Radio, every possible method in which you can hear a podcast is available if you want to listen. And again, Todd, we'll be in touch soon, man. I appreciate your time, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to let everybody know, I thought Eric did a tremendous job defending me in this Mike Postle situation. And, I didn't think I was going to lose $330 million when I was sued, but it was very unnerving. It was something that stressed me out tremendously. But, with the speed that he responded to it and the quality of the response and just the way he handled the whole case, I knew I was in very good hands, and indeed the results went the way I was hoping. So, aside from not being able to collect from Mike Postle, but that's obviously not Eric's fault, and we're going to keep at it. So, I was very, very happy with his work there, and I thought he did a great job. So, I just want to let you know that as well.
I appreciate it very much, and I'll be in touch soon. Take care, man.
Okay. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye. So there you have it. The Todd Dan Druff Witteles. I'll tell you one other thing. Because I know we're kind of getting pressed for time, but Todd actually is also the person responsible for our firm getting the PayPal class action.
Yeah.
He's the one that put us in touch with Chris Moneymaker, right? Because they know each other. These poker elites and these professionals, a lot of them are familiar with each other.
Right.
And, that's how you got started. So, again, we owe a lot to Todd. He's been a great friend of the firm, great friend of our show at this point today. So we appreciate everybody subscribing and listening. Our numbers keep going up. It's so exciting. We will do a part 2 of this defamation topic based on the Reddit posts and people that have questions and they're curious. We didn't want to put too much into one episode.
Right.
And then we've got, we'll continue putting out our content twice a week. So Hurricane Karina, tell them where they can find us.
All right, guys. Thank you all for listening. We appreciate all the support. Remember, you can find us on Instagram at The Potomac Confirm and our other Instagram at The Late Podcast. You can find us on Twitter and TikTok at The Potomac Confirm. You can visit our website at evlawfirm.us and you can email us at info@evlawfirm.us. Bye, guys.
Bye.